Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. So, what have we done and why? Last November, there was this workshop Salla-Maria already mentioned. And in the workshop, it was discovered that there did not exist any generally accepted guidelines for diving in inland streaming waters, rivers, or streams. There are drift diving courses from different training organizations, but they cover only ocean diving, ocean currents. And you can learn something from them, but then heavily adapt to river environment, and they are lacking a lot of information relevant to the river environment. Also in cave diving training, there's some information of currents and how to cope with them. And again, it doesn't cover everything. And of course, a cave tunnel is quite a different environment compared to a natural river. So it was agreed after the workshop to collect good practices from different actors, different divers, diving groups to a single document. A pilot version of this document was published in April, and we collected feedback through whole summer, and now the updated version will be published next week sometime. So who were in this working group? There were experienced recreational divers, there were scientific divers, professional scientific divers, there were retired military personnel, and I cannot neither confirm or deny there might have been even actively working military personnel with a lot of experience diving in rivers. And then there were also representatives from rescue services operating in those conditions. And the feedback we got came from all over Finland. So quite a different river systems and different environments were in the end represented in the content. So I'm quite happy of the different perspectives, and you know, when you don't have any general guidelines, people tend to develop their own solutions, and those can differ quite a lot from each other. So having this diverse background and you know, actual practical knowledge resulted in quite an okay document. Of course, it will develop and get better during the years, and we will, of course, hope for continuing feedback and you know, suggestions how to make it better in the future updates. So a little bit about the content. This is quite a condensed version. The actual document is about 8 pages long, and then there are a lot of annexes and attachments. So to this presentation, I have just picked some examples. So please keep that in mind. I might have left something really important away from this presentation just to save room and have some examples here, and I hope everybody will read through the actual document and familiarize themselves with that. So at the start with the dive planning, all the normal safety guidelines, good diving practices and planning procedures apply to the rivers and streams environment also. The training you have received is relevant, of course, and experience and so on. But on the top of this basic stuff, streaming waters have their own characteristics which must be addressed. And there are different styles of diving. In many cases, research is done stationary spots. You don't move around a lot. And then there are cases when you cover a large area on one dive, survey, mapping, searching for new sites, and when recreational divers dive for fun. Distances can be covered on a single dive, which are several kilometers, even more. So it's really a lot. The environment is really different. All the rivers are different. The same river is different in depending on the day and the time of the year and so on. And then the way of diving is different. So it's really a challenge to cover all this in the guidelines or document of good practices, but we tried. Joni went through the typical risks quite well in his presentations already, but here are some of the risks as a quick reminder. Strength of the current, and it can change from day to day or different times of year, and the current can be different in different parts of the river. The volume and water level, volume of water and water level can change. There are rainy seasons and drier seasons, and then in some river systems, there's artificial control of water levels. For example, opening and closing the dams and so on. Collision risk and risk of entanglement came up in Joni's presentation also. There can be underwater objects, stones, logs, trees, fishing equipment, all kinds of man-made structures, and even collision with other divers. Objects floating on the surface of the river, and then, of course, water traffic. And one of the risks is that current makes everything colder. So there's potential hypothermia to the divers. Equipment can freeze up. There can be free flows and so on. Working against the current is physically demanding. Swimming against current may be completely impossible. And in any case, cost consumption can increase dramatically. If we are diving in groups, holding the group together can be difficult. And one of the recommendations in the guidelines is that if you are diving in a group, you should limit the size of the group to 3 divers. And then if you have a larger body of divers, you should have more small groups rather than one large group. There can be problems with the navigation. Sense of direction may be lost in the whirling currents. Compasses may prove to be unreliable, especially if there are a lot of structures or metal on the bottom, and high speed current may carry you further down river than you realize, faster than you realize. And then there's the ice cover, and in many places where current is fast, there's open water, and further downstream there can be ice cover. So there's always a risk that you can drift down under the ice if you are not prepared to that. And entries and exits may be dangerous also. Riverbanks can be slippery or high. There may be a risk of falling and so on. And then if the fast current makes you miss the planned exit point, what happens then? Then we try to give some tips about managing those risks. Research before the dives, before the dive planning is really important. There is some information available about the strength of the current and the volume of water and water levels. In Finland, for example, the Vesi.fi service, but it should be noted that historical data may be currently unreliable. For example, climate change can affect things. So if historically this has been time of like low water levels, now the rains may come earlier and the water levels may be higher, or the current may be stronger than you anticipate from the historical knowledge. It's always wise to ask locals and divers who are already familiar with the site, interview them about the conditions. And it's really important to conduct visual observation of the conditions before the dive. Just see how it looks like. Then the competence of the dive team and your own competence, it's really important. Everybody must have appropriate training and experience relevant to the conditions. It doesn't help if you are a really experienced open sea diver, but are not familiar with the river conditions. So gathering experience under the supervision of those already familiar with the conditions is important. Increase your competency step by step in a safe manner. And then carefully made detailed dive plans are important. For example, shall we dive across the current, along with the current downstream, or is the plan to stay stationary on the spot and examine something? You know, it's there. Then, what are the safe exit points and alternative exit points if in case we miss the planned exit? If we plan to dive along with the current for, say, 2 or 3 kilometers downstream, is there someone to pick us up by car or boat? And then the task sharing. This is basically the same as with the cave divers and so on. If there are several tasks, it might help to divide the tasks between the members of the dive team. There was a lot of talk about using of surface rope or surface line and phones. A phone contact to the surface would make work more efficient. Diver can report changes in the current and conditions. If there's a surface line, diver doesn't drift away. If they lose bottom contact or lose consciousness even, for example, due collision, surface personnel can warn the diver of any hazards drifting towards them with the current. However, this works best if you are working in limited area. If you need to cover a large area, then the use of surface rope, surface line is problematic or impossible. And with recreational divers, it's very rare for them to have appropriate training and experience in use of this equipment. So it's mostly used by professionals. Then there are some tips. For example, you can pull yourself along the bottom by gripping stones, logs, etc. On a softer bottom, a screwdriver or steel bar with a handle can also work. And large stones, log piles, underwater structures, and suitable bottom shapes can shelter you from the current if you go behind them. And it's no use fighting the current. Try to get the edge and away instead. So those are kinds of tips and information found in the document. And finally, every river is different. Every day in the same river is different. Adjust your planning and actions accordingly. Please read the whole document. And then there's a link to the folder where you can find the document because the intention is to publish the updated version next week. I didn't include the direct link to the document because it will change next week, but you should be able to find it from the folder Turvallinen Sukeltaja from Divers Federation website. And we invite further feedback. You can send it to me. Now, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mika, for the summary of exactly this best practices of diving in current waters. I see here in the comment that there was an accident in Ladenous in France, and a small dam opening at the quite still surface sucked the diver down the cliff. This is one thing that was mentioned actually in a book that I recently read about risk management. It's a differential pressure that you face there. And these are things where you have openings and there's water taking out, like in this break. You can not only be sucked into, it can also be that just your arm is sucked into and you got stuck or something like that. These things also happen. So this is flowing water is very, very dangerous. It is a little bit like with the wind. You try to not fight it, but rather make it your friend. That means you have to know exactly what is going on and what the water wants to do, and then just follow it and use it for your purpose in a smart way. I think that's the learning from that. You pointed out that the normal standard also applies, the normal safety standards, what we always use. I heard the same thing actually from Ed. He said something very similar. He also said very similarly that conditions can quickly change. So really look the weather forecast in the polar region. Here look the flow forecast or situation from Vesi-Piste. I think that is, I have not looked into it, so I will do that as my homework. I very recently, just by accident, had a presentation on YouTube followed that was about the rainfalls that happened just recently in Central Europe. And there are many stations that tell you the water levels along the river network. I believe in Finland it's the same. And if you follow those levels and you see the level goes up there and you know a little bit the pattern, you can predict when downstream the levels go up and the streams get flooded after rainfall as well. So if you really plan to dive in rivers, so I think it makes sense and it is wise to get familiar with exactly these tools. Thanks for pointing them out. And do baby steps. That's also what I understood here. Always baby steps, and have a screwdriver with you. That is something I was, you normally forbidden because screwdrivers are used to collect portholes from wrecks. So they are not allowed nowadays anymore, but perhaps in these circumstances we can take screwdrivers or big knife that also works, I heard from Belgian divers, and they were diving in a Dutch river. But now questions.
Vesa has something.
Vesa has a question, please.
Firstly, a comment. I've been diving in the early spring, or would it be late spring, when the ice has been melting and the complete surface has been free of ice when I started the dive. But the winds have shifted at the end of the dive, and there's been quite a bit of ice at the surface that has complicated issues. So I just thought that might be also for rivers, that upriver where the lake is, if things have melted, you could have quite a bit of ice coming down the river at the same time. So this may be something that you want to think about, or others want to think about. And my question was, how exactly is the screwdriver or this bar used? Is the diver attached to the bar somehow? Or are you just like, is it just being held on to?
My understanding is you have that thing in the hand, you stick it in, you pull yourself, and you keep sticking and pulling, and really like this. So that, at least that's what we did in the River Schelde when there was too much current and we had to pull ourselves.
Yeah, and the reason is that when you have something to hold on, that way it's easier to you keeping you at the bottom, and that way that moving upstreams comes more easier, and you don't have to use your body's big muscles like legs so much. Then that way it's easier, and you can control your gas supply and breathing also. That you don't, and if you have those steel bars, or well, we have used founded wrenches also at Heinola, and it is that when you have a, how I say, a big flat bottom, and that current is, how I say, it's start to hitting you. When you have something to hold on, you can also rest in there, because you have something to hold on. If you have to just crawl it with your hands without any help, it's like a CrossFit train.
Yeah, I think what the tool does is it works like an anchor.
I understood the anchor part. I'm just thinking about it's difficult to be using wet notes or doing research if you're holding on for dear life onto a screwdriver. So I think there should be maybe a tool designed more like an ice pick. I mean, ice axe in ice climbing, that you can place them there, and then you're anchored to those two spots. You know, move one and move the other, and move upriver, and then you could still use wet notes and release them if needed. This was kind of my thought how it was used.
Yeah, I think in that situation you do not take notes anymore. You just try to get out of the out of the problem, because here you really cannot work freely anymore. It gets very, very dangerous.
Like having two, it makes also sense.
No, what in this situation, I think what you use is a John line or something that attaches you to the line that is going across the river. We have seen that at Joni's presentation. That's one way. So you can just maybe move across the stream in one line. So you hook yourself, then you have the hands free. That is, of course, then the planned way. And I think to use a stick or something like that to hold you in the current is not planned. That's the backup solution in the emergency case, I think.
Joni had his hand up.
Yeah, please.
A while ago.
No, I was just going to mention that that sort of release lock system that we have trained with people to use in hard current. So it allows diver to it's attached to the waist or a vest, kind of a harness, diver that leaves the hands free, so that you can actually hang from the rope and use your hands on the bottom. But it is true also that in a very hard current it's impossible to use any wet notes, for example. But you can always use the communication, oral communication, if you have a phone, and you can dictate your notes to the surface tender as such, yeah, or just count, use a counter or something. It depends on what kind of data you're after.
Yeah, important is the hands-free set, so to speak. Yeah. And important is to not need your muscles to work against the current, because the current is stronger. Yes.
Basically, rock climbers have this very useful technologies that can be used for really controlling the diver while getting down the stream slowly.
Yeah, you have then two connections